The Wichita Aviation Office of China is already experiencing success as Wichita positions itself to become a major aviation player in China. We are fortunate to have two guests here with us today. We have Wichita Mayor Carl Brewer down at the end and Karyn Page with Kansas Global Trade Services. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, first, just tell us a little bit about this office.
Well, the office that we actually have, we opened up here a week ago. We were in China, in Beijing, and it was through a partnership with some private investors that actually helped us out. And the office primarily is to connect Chinese aviation industry and businesses with Wichita aviation and Wichita aviation businesses that we actually have here.
Mm-hmm. And what did it take to actually get this office going?
Well, it took some strategy, some research, and some money and the right connections. So we took a little bit of an innovative approach. It might be a little bit different for an American to think about. It was a little bit more Chinese. There's a word that the Chinese use called guangxi, and it really means relationship, but it's much more than relationships. It's actually almost an intermingling of interests and ideas so that both experience a win-win. And so what we did was we put a little guangxi into play, and we were able to find a couple of Chinese investors who are beginning to have several businesses in the general aviation industry, which is really in its infancy in China. They already have business interests, and they have other business interests, and they really want to become more prevalent in that industry. And they saw the value of partnering with the Air Capital by providing us, free of charge, Beijing office space as well as staffing for our office. So the City of Wichita, Kansas Global Trade Services is not paying cash for the office in Beijing.
That's amazing.
We get benefit. And guangxi, that's what it is. So they're leveraging. They're leveraging off the Wichita Air Capital name, off our commitment to being available in China to partner with Chinese business people and government people to grow their aviation industry with the experience of ours.
How did you guys find these wonderful investors?
Just, like you normally find people.
Networking?
Someone who knows someone, networking, exactly, just networking. And one thing I think that's important, it seems very sudden that this happened, that we were able to open the office. And it did kind of end up happening quickly, but we've actually been working on this for over 3 years. So we've just been doing it quietly and working on it steadily. Doing the research, making the connections, working on the objectives. What do we need to happen? Who do we need to be working with? When we open the office, what will it do? Who will benefit? What will our focus be? That sort of thing.
So Mayor, how did you guys get this idea?
Well, actually, we've made several trips to China. As you know, the city of Wichita has a sister city in Kaifeng. And secondly, we have an eco-partner in Wuxi, China. But last year, ourselves, we took a 12-member delegation, and we went to China. We visited several different cities, and the focus and the concentration seemed to be on aviation. We started finding out that oh, by the way, by the year 2015, that the government was opening up the airspace. We started finding out. We learned that there was a need and a demand for general aviation. And quite naturally, when you hear someone say general aviation, your ears perk up and you're like, well, we can do that. And then we end up finding out, okay, when they open the airspace, in preparation for this general aviation and these new opportunities, that there was going to be a need for approximately, starting off with about 8,000 aircraft for general aviation. So then you start looking farther. Well, is there individuals that can actually purchase that? And when somebody tell me that in one particular country there's 63,000 billionaires that are there that are interested in aircraft, then I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is something that the city of Wichita, perfect connection, because we can provide them with general aviation and you can get the best quality. We have a very diverse selection of aviation. So how do we start? And so as we start visiting with these different cities, we would actually go to other cities. And I was telling someone that we went to our sister city, and that was not our intent to have that discussion. And our sister city said, we've heard that you've been to other cities and you are talking about general aviation, and we don't want you to leave us out of this discussion because we would like to do these things. And in some cases, they were interested in building airports, but primarily, if you look at it, if we can provide those types of aircraft, it's going to help us out immensely, because it's going to be job creation. We have to build parts. If they purchase the planes, we have to build parts to be able to supply them with the parts that they need to be able to do their regular quarterly, yearly maintenance, their periodic maintenance. Well, to be able to do that, it's going to create more jobs. We're going to sell more planes. That's going to create more jobs. And then sub-assemblies, that's going to create more jobs. So there's a huge opportunity for us there in general aviation. For them, it's going to be doing the exact same thing. The only difference is we already have a skilled workforce that's uncomparable to anybody in the world. I mean, nobody can argue that we have the best skilled workforce in the world. So they're getting an excellent quality. But secondly, these individuals need to be trained to be able to maintain that. So by doing that, we can actually provide an opportunity that we can train them to be able to maintain their aircraft once we sell them an aircraft. And so from an economic standpoint, it creates more jobs there, creates more jobs here. It helps out our economy. It helps out their economy, which I think is what most cities are interested in, and certainly our aviation industry. But the other portion is it helps out all of our aviation industry and provide opportunities for all of them.
And speaking of that, you guys have already had some early successes?
Yes, as we know, we were there, and we signed, and we were with Beach, and Beach sold one plane, and the lady decided she wanted to buy another.
That's double the order. Double the order. Great.
So that was kind of interesting, because that's the first time I ever seen something like that happen. I think I really want two now. And so that was great. So we had an opportunity to be there while they were delivering and celebrate their success in selling their aircraft, but also being there to watch a customer say, I think we want to. And they sold their aircraft to a civil aviation university there. Mm-hmm. And so, but the other portion is the total number of pilots that they need that are interested in getting their pilot's license. They don't have that capability of being able to do that. So they asked us, they said, if we send individuals to the United States, can you train our pilots? We train the pilots. That provide them a much faster opportunity to be able to purchase these planes and get them in the air. So there's some training opportunities that are there for us, and of course, that's additional jobs that create for our businesses here.
Mm-hmm. Karyn, will you talk a little bit about how the office works and how many employees they have?
The office is staffed by our chief representative, Carl Brewer, and initially we'll have one assistant, but I got an email from him early this morning. As the viewers may know, China is like about 13 hours different time frame, so Carl and I actually email or talk late at night, my late at night, his mid-morning. So I got an email overnight from him. He said, I'm on the subway. I'm on the way to buy computers and teleconference equipment for the office. I wanted to give you some thoughts. We are hiring one person, and we're also working with interns from a local university. So to answer your question about staffing, there'll be initially 2 people, and they're also going to work with interns from an aviation university nearby in Beijing. So basically, it's really simple what the office does. It matches Wichita aviation experience with China's aviation needs. That's really what it does. So whether that's training or parts or airplanes that China needs, Carl will filter that to me, and the mayor and I will work together to make sure we get the lead generation, that information out to the aviation companies in Wichita and Kansas.
Will all of our aviation manufacturers have the potential opportunity to benefit from this office and these relationships?
Of course they would, because the more opportunities that we provide for them, the more opportunities that the city of Wichita and the state of Kansas and our aviation industry will have. I think it's even more interesting that we had we went to Xi'an, which is the equivalent for an air show that was equivalent to the United States Oshkosh. And so we were a little surprised as we were received there. And we were actually going to be one of the speakers of a panel discussion, and we were asked by the government before I had a chance to speak that they wanted to meet with us. And so when we met with them, then we ended up finding out that through our meeting that Xi'an is actually in the center of China, just like the city of Wichita is in the center of the United States. And they have their aviation. That's where the focus of aviation growth is going to happen. And it's already started there. And so what they thought is that we could build some type of relationship and partnership. So what we did is we agreed to be trade partners between the two cities. And not only did we agree to be trade partners, but next year the government there will be bringing a group of businessmen to the city of Wichita to connect them with the aviation industries and also the manufacturing to see what they can do together. And then in turn, we will do the exact same thing and take a group of businessmen to Xi'an to connect them with various different businesses there in that particular city and also in China. The interesting thing about them is that, we say it's in Xi'an, but the other portion is you have individuals, they take bullet trains and they fly, when we were there, they were coming in from all over the place. Mm-hmm. But it also opened additional opportunities for us because at no point in time were we thinking about Germany or Spain or any of those places, those other countries. And of course, when they found out we were there, then they wanted to sit down and they wanted to meet with us. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity, a lot of exchange, and certainly as we build these relationships, it's going to be a lot of opportunities for Wichita and the state of Kansas.
So you're saying potentially we could have additional offices in other countries?
Well, they did ask us to open. That's part of what the government in their particular city, they volunteered and gave this space in I guess it would be their aviation capital, and said, we're interested in doing this since we're going to do this agreement and we're going to be trade partners. We want you guys to have this space and to do this. And Karyn might want to talk with you more about that because we did go ahead and had Carl to do an MOU with them.
And what the mayor is speaking about is part of the strategy. China's a big country, like the United States is. So one office with, a couple of people, even with interns, or even if we double that staff, is going to be very difficult for them to cover the entire country of China. And the part of the strategy is to develop liaison offices with the strongest aviation cities in China. Xi'an is one of those strongest cities. So it's really sort of two-pronged in that there would be a city-to-city relationship, like a memorandum of understanding, MOU, that would be signed, and then an identified organization that would partner directly with our Beijing office. So what happened when we were in China, the mayor met with the vice mayor, the second in command of the city of Xi'an, agreed to look at partnering opportunities, city-to-city trade partnerships. And then our office met with the China Aviation Industrial Base, which is located in the city of Xi'an, and they CAIB agreed to host our first liaison office. So now we have an office in Beijing, and soon will be opened. The memorandum of understanding says within 30 days are to identify staffing and office space in Xi'an. So we know that CAIB headquarters, we're going to be on the 6th floor, and in the next 30 days we'll know more about who will be staffing it. What's interesting is that, it seems like this happened really quickly, and it did. Like, it kind of all just came together rather quickly, but we actually started meeting with CAIB. We started talking with them in 2009. They made the first trip to Wichita in 2010. Then we actually went to visit them in 2012. So we've been working on it for a while. I think it's important for the viewers of City 7 to understand it doesn't just happen overnight. It takes work, it takes repetition, it takes following up with the relationships we've built, it takes chasing down leads that never come to be, and then chasing down leads that actually do come to fruition. So it was really exciting that we got the office open in Beijing, and then CAIB, because of all the efforts previous to that, they were ready to go. So when their city said, we want to work with your mayor and with your city, then that just opened up the gates for us to go ahead and have our office work with CAIB and have an office. So within 30 days, we'll have a Liaison office in Xi'an, and the strategy is to open probably 3 or 4 more offices throughout China in strong aviation cities.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of work, but there's, it's not just the mayor and I working on it. So there's a team in China that are working on it, and of course the Kansas Global staff, and we have some wonderful people at the city of Wichita that contribute a great deal to making all these pieces and parts really work together to hopefully we'll get more jobs for our air capital.
What's been the biggest challenges for you guys as you've worked so hard to put all this together?
I think
The language barrier.
Obviously. It sounds like you're picking up some new words, though.
Yeah, you do pick up words. You have to learn how to speak actually English differently, simply. You have to speak more simply, because even if you have someone who's fluent in Chinese, then they're not going to know all the aviation industry. That's been one of the most challenging things, is the Chinese really are quite familiar with commercial aviation, civil aviation, and like defense. But general aviation, they're less familiar with. They know that it means opportunity, and they know they need it, but they don't really know what it means. So that's been one of the biggest hurdles that we've had, is sometimes you have to establish the working language, which is usually English with interpreters, and then you actually have to establish what do we mean by general aviation. That's some of the ground floor conversations we've had. And just to give you an example, before this trip, I was in China 2 weeks before that, kind of setting up some of the groundwork. Had a conversation with some very knowledgeable people that are doing some amazing work in air finance in China, and talked for an hour, which is about 30 to 40 minutes of actual content, because you have with the interpretation, it doubles the time. And they come to find out we were just really using different definitions of general aviation. So we had to back up and redefine, establish the terms of what we meant by general aviation, so they could understand we were on the same page. That's one of the biggest challenges, is not just the country language, but the industry language, because it's new to them. It's old hat to us. We speak aviation all the time. We don't even think about it, right?
Language of its own.
Yeah, it's a language of its own. So, and I think that, and I won't speak for the mayor, of course, but the other challenge that we've had is getting just general citizens to understand that China is not just to be feared, that it really can be an opportunity if we do it smartly and if we get out there and work. And I've heard the mayor say more than once, we have to be in the game to win the game. And we're not just competing against Oklahoma or Missouri. We're competing against other countries. So the air capital in Wichita is competing against Brazil. It's competing against France. And we have to get out there. And thankfully we have a city and we have a mayor that's willing to get on a plane and ride for 13 hours and coach, go to China and go from stop to stop to stop for 6 to 12 days and shake hands with people and make lots of speeches to get the air capital brand out there. But that's what it takes. It's challenging. So language is a challenge, aviation language is a challenge. It's hard. It's hard travel. The trip is hard. It's a long way over there. And when we're there, we don't stop, do we?
No.
We don't stop.
Early morning, late night, meeting after meeting after meeting, and you're continuously rushing. I think one of the things I think is more important, kind of another example of how serious they are about aviation is, of course, they certainly recognize that it would have been better if they had been able to establish a sister city with the city of Wichita. But because we already had a sister city in China, they established a sister city, and it's just been recently they signed it with Seattle, Washington. So that's a good example that everyone's taking this very, very serious. But fortunately, we're one of the first, and we, as far as when you talk about just the general aviation itself, we are the first on the ground, so that allows us to be very competitive. And secondly, I think even more so, what we've learned is China's about relationships. You know, we in America can make a phone call, we can do an email, and a handshake. And with China itself, it's about building relationships. They like that face-to-face relationships, and then we'll start looking at the emails and the phone calls. But to start off with, you know, let me get to know you as an individual. Let me get to know your city as, you know, what it's like, and you do the exact same thing with them. And so, and once they think, well, yeah, we think we can do business, and then you're on your way. And in our particular case, because we've been there several times, and Karyn has been there many times, we've established this relationship where they feel that comfortable with the city of Wichita. They feel comfortable with me, and very interested in moving forward. And they certainly see those opportunities that we can provide for them, and we certainly see those opportunities. And you know, I see those 8,000 opportunities of an aircraft leaving the city of Wichita going to China, and that's just to start off with. So you know, it's going to be beneficial for both of us. And so this is something that's really exciting, and other mayors throughout the state of Kansas are asking, you know, how do we get involved in this? And certainly we're working with the governor's office. Secretary of Commerce has already been here. In fact, they flew down the day after we returned from China. They flew down to get a briefing to find out how can the state of Kansas assist, and how can we get involved in this? How do we help? What do we need to do? And the governor and I will be doing a briefing on the 1st, and as to what we actually learned. And so this relationship and this partnership is taking off, and I think it's something that's really great. You know, we're doing those things. Economic development is changing the dynamics of the way all municipalities function, and it's changing the role and the responsibility of elected officials, mayors, throughout the country. And I think we were talking to someone this morning, and just in China alone, there are already 5 mayors that had made a presence there for various different things, where mayors are coming and they're being on the ground. I mean, you can't get much lower and trying to get into the trenches and establishing those partnerships and those relationships than talking to the mayors of those particular cities. You know, you can certainly talk at the federal level, and you can certainly talk at the state level, but when you start getting at ground zero and talking to mayors, that's where the connections start really happening.
And I think a year or two from now, it's going to be incredible to see all the things that have developed as a result of all the groundwork and the relationships that you guys have built. And I'm glad, Mayor, that you touched on some of that, because I wanted to ask you if you guys were worried at all about other cities stealing your great idea, but it sounds like the foundation you've laid, you think will really pay off.
I think that we're on the front end of building that relationship, and why wouldn't another city? I mean, this is something that's been in every media source. As soon as it was announced that we were headed there to do that, every media source was paying attention to it, you know, throughout the entire state of Kansas. Once we arrived, we did a presentation. We talked about the city of Wichita. We talked about our aviation industry, talked about who we were, and every media source in China started broadcasting, you know, the interviews and what was actually said and who we were and things of that nature. And so if I was a mayor in some other city, in some other state, I would think, China's huge. I'm headed there. And I think you're going to see the same competitiveness that you actually see, you know, with our aviation industry for today, where every day we have the challenge of somebody trying to steal our aviation industry from under us. And I hate to say that because steal is a very strong word, but at the end of the day, that's the reality. That's what it is. And we recognize that we have something that's good, and so we're going to have to work hard to continue to build on those relationships and be there to be able to protect it. We're going to have to spend the same effort that we spend to protect them here. The same thing there, and that's going to mean, you know, having that hands-on, that face-to-face, and building that partnership. The advantage is we were the first ones to build a relationship, and it isn't done overnight. we have a huge investment in this.
And it was, I just wanted to add, the mayor's pretty humble. It was, so I'm going to speak just from a Wichita citizen view, because I grew up in Wichita. I went to public schools here. I went to Wichita State. I mean, I love this community, and I love the air capital. And so we were asked to present Wichita, the air capital. That's what the mayor was asked to present. So I put together a PowerPoint that was translated into Chinese. So imagine a huge stage in an auditorium that seated more than 500 people. Every person in the audience, except for like us, pretty much, had headphones on because there's simultaneous translation going on. Okay, so it's all pretty much in Chinese. The audience is predominantly Chinese. And the mayor is presenting and doing an amazing job talking about the city of Wichita. So not just we're the air capital, but what does it look like? What does it feel like? We put some pictures up, you know, about the keeper of the plains, you know, it's on these two rivers, and, you know, Pizza Hut was started here. Just really painting this picture of what Wichita is like. And then going into more in depth about the aviation industry, the vertical and horizontal integration of this entire aviation cluster, from training at NCAT to research and development at NIAR to the original equipment manufacturers and over 350 suppliers. And he gets done with the speech, and there's a little lag in the interpretation, okay? So the little lag, and the moderator's trying to wrap it up. Mayor's trying to get back to his seat on the front row. He's swarmed really by people, media, people who wanted to meet him, and we kind of had to divide and conquer because there were so many people that wanted to talk to him that I started taking business cards as well and started scheduling media interviews. But back to, you know, being a Wichitan, they were so happy. They were so like almost in awe to talk to the mayor from the air capital of the world. It was so cool to be a Wichitan in China at that moment, after the mayor gave this really great speech about what it's like to be the mayor of Wichita, Kansas, in China, and to get this really, it was overwhelming. I mean, I knew the mayor would do a good job talking about Wichita. I had no idea the Chinese would react that way. I mean, it was a flood of people. It was so cool. I mean, if the citizens of Wichita could see what other people in the world, how they see us, they want to be us.
And that's important for us to remember. We need to have that sense of pride.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You know, it's easy to talk about our aviation industry, and it's easy to talk about the city of Wichita. We have very, very high standards for ourselves. And so the slightest thing, you know, we're like, but, you know, comparison to the rest of the country and the rest of the world, you know, it's really not that bad. But it's easy when you talk about the citizens of Wichita, our community, what we do in this community, how we pull together, how we interact with each other. Other countries and other cities, I mean, they are really in awe. Mm-hmm. And even in our worst moment, it's nowhere near some of the other cities in other countries at their fairest moment. I mean, it's just the way that we are here, and so, you know, people they're interested in us. And, you know, one of the things that I told them as I was speaking, I said, if you want to be successful in the aviation industry and you want to do a good job and you want a good quality aircraft, and I told them, I said, I can go to any airport and I can just stand there, look at the aircraft, and you can figure out the one that you like is going to be the one that was built in Wichita. Mm-hmm. Because the quality's good, we build beautiful aircraft, and, you know, very few flaws, but people pay attention to the quality of workmanship. Mm-hmm. And so you can go to any airport and just look on the ramp, and you can look at the planes and you can see which ones were done in the city of Wichita. And I tell them, I said, if you want to be successful, you don't have any choice but to partner with the city of Wichita. If you want mediocre average, then certainly you can go someplace else. And everybody's wanting to be a winner. And the only way you can be a winner is investing in Wichita aviation.
What are the next steps?
Now the next steps are really managing the details. So looking at how do we prioritize what the aviation needs are in China, and of course our research led us to some suppositions that will follow. For example, we know that China really needs to build up its aviation infrastructure before they can really buy all those business aircraft that they want to fly. So what we mean by infrastructure is they really have a deep need for training, maintenance workers, FBO managers, repair stations. They need air traffic controllers, they need pilots. I mean, anything you can think of that makes the aviation industry work, they really need training in. The second thing they need is they don't have enough airports. They don't have enough FBOs. There's we can count them on two hands if we're being generous about what they are.
What's an FBO?
Fixed base operators. So Yingling Aviation. So if you own a business aircraft, you need a place to land your airplane, get it refueled, get it cleaned up, go do your business, come back, park it, that sort of thing. So that's what an FBO is, and there's very few of them in China. So those are the next steps, is really getting down to the details about how do we match those needs up with the skill sets of Wichita aviation industry. And although it may seem like a sort of a direct translation, it's not, because, and this is really interesting that in our research, what we've discovered is that we kind of take for granted our knowledge. I mean, we have generations of aviation, airframe maintenance and airframe design knowledge. It's sort of in our blood, it's part of our culture. But we have to actually take that knowledge and that experience and translate it into training packages. So it's going to take some effort and some partnerships with our educational institutions, and hopefully, soon, I don't know when that will be, but that's one of the reasons Carl Brewer is coming in a couple of weeks, is so that we can really start to work out who's going to help us build those educational packages to start that training. So our focus is on infrastructure. Okay, and within that, the priority is training opportunities, and we'll just keep chipping away from there.
A lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we do that, and then also we have to, as you said, we get with INCAT and Wichita State, and also with Secretary of Commerce and the Governor's Office, because it's going to be a Kansas partnership to be able to make sure that everything runs smoothly, and that we secure every single opportunity that comes before us.
Sounds like you guys have been very, very thorough in your approach, and it makes sense to start the infrastructure process and that training process first. Is there anything else you guys want people to know before we wrap up?
No, I'd say, for those in the aviation industry, no matter what role that you actually play, I would say thank you. Thank you for the job that you do, because you make my job easy to be able to sell you, and thank you to our aviation industry. And now that we are really what you call truly growing global, continue the good work, and we'll continue to work on selling planes and growing our aviation capital of the world.
Yep, that says it all.
Well said, Mayor. Mayor Karyn, thank you so much for being here. It's been wonderful to hear about all the great work you guys are doing.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this edition of Local Loop.